Hello and welcome to my astrology channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of subjects. Please check out the video description. I will leave the information there. Thank you. So today is going to be another transit video for Cancer Ascendant 2021. Once again, I do apologize because of this series dragging on. Please remind me for next year's series to start around November, because yeah, these may not look like much, but they're actually very time consuming to make. So yeah. And as always, the next sign that I'm going to be tackling in this series is going to be Scorpio, because like I mentioned in the beginning, I am going to extract a different sign every time I make one of these ascendant transit videos for 2021 instead of following the regular order of the zodiac, So the next one is going to be Scorpio. And once again, as an introduction, I am going to be focusing on Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto to some extent, and Rahu and Ketu, since these are the generational planets, and they're going to be relevant for everyone who has this particular ascendant. And yeah, obviously there will be other transits and other aspects to be considered when you are looking at each individual person's chart. But this is a general description for Cancer Ascendant, and also I will be looking at the aspects that these planets make. And if you look at the chart, you're gonna see there that I have marked the aspects of Saturn by gray, the aspects of Jupiter by yellow, the aspects of Rahu by pink, and the aspects of Ketu by blue. And once again, in Vedic astrology, these certain planets cast so-called special aspects, meaning Saturn aspects the first, the third, the seventh, and the 10th house from where it sits. Jupiter will Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu will aspect the first, the fifth, the seventh, and the 9th placements from where they sit, and that's why the colors are there. And also, as part of the introduction, I have divided this year into two separate charts, which you will be seeing on the screen. And the first chart corresponds to the time frames that when Saturn and Jupiter are conjunct in Capricorn, namely when Jupiter is in Capricorn. And the second chart is for the times when Jupiter will be moving into Aquarius. They both of them apply to a time interval of about roughly 6 months. So yeah, and you're going to be seeing them on the screen. So let me start. So first of all, I'm going to be talking about Rahu and Ketu, because these stay in the same signs throughout the year. So Rahu is going to be in Taurus, and it's pretty strong. Ketu is going to be in Scorpio, and it's pretty strong. Unfortunately for Cancer Ascendant, all of these planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu, which Rahu and Ketu are the north and south node of the moon, so they're not planets. But all of these are so-called functional malefics, so basically they're not good for your ascendant. This is why a lot of what I'm going to interpret depends on your individual chart to a large extent. So namely, and I'm going to be talking more detail as I go along with the description, but you want to be, first of all, interested in whether you're going through one of the Mahadashas or Antardashas of Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, or Ketu. Then you will be particularly affected. And then you also have to look at the Ashtak Varga charts for Saturn and Jupiter. And if the Ashtak Varga is good, so for Saturn I think over 3 is very good, and for Jupiter I think it's over 4 or 5. Basically, if let's say for Jupiter you have 1 point, 2 points, for Saturn you have like 0 or something, then you can say that the Ashtak Varga score is not very good. And most likely you will experience, and also, yeah, if you're going through the Mahadasha or the Antardasha of Saturn or Jupiter and the Ashtak Varga score is negative, then it is more likely that you're going to experience some negative expression of these transits. But you're going to understand things a little bit better when I get into details. So yeah, Rahu will fall in Taurus and in your 11th house, as you can see. And it will aspect the 3rd, the 7th houses as well. So all of the air houses will be affected by Rahu. Rahu is foreign influence, it's technology, mainly foreign influence and technology. And also shows rapid ups and downs, and also shows strange situations, unusual situations. And all of these houses are your houses of relationships and socializing. So this shows me that most likely your social contacts will have chances of developing. So you will have chances of networking more during this time than in the previous year, or than when Rahu was not in Taurus. But this is not necessarily a positive thing, again, because Rahu is a malefic in your case. It could also show that you might attract people that are not well intended. So you want to be careful about any new contacts that you make, especially friends that you're going to make during this time, because you might come across people who try to deceive you or try to especially by offering you things that are, seem too good to be true. So basically, if something is too good to be true, run away, because this is not the year when you want to take risks in this department. Ketu will be in the 5th house, and it will aspect the 9th and the 1st house. So all the fire houses, which are the houses of individual expression, personality, and all that, and vitality and other things. Ketu is basically the spiritual world and its intuition, sensitivity. It also shows detachment towards the area where it sits, whereas Rahu shows attachment / obsession. So yeah, that's another way to look at it. So Ketu will be in the 5th house, aspecting all the other fire houses, which shows a decreased interest in romance, children, and also it can also show an overall decrease of vitality, sadly, and a decrease of confidence, self-confidence, because it aspects your ascendant. So, and also there will be more of a tendency for you to just retreat in your shell and be very, maybe even a touch paranoid. So be careful that you don't miss out too much because of that. But, on the other hand, it also makes you more interested into things like spirituality, occult stuff, and it also makes you more intuitive and more sensitive to your environment. So now to get into the specifics. So chart 1, which, as you can see from the screen, applies to the time frame from around January 1st, 2021 to around April 5th, 2021. And also from around September 14th, 2021 to around November 20th, 2021, when Jupiter is in Capricorn. I did not include any differences of interpretation between retrograde or not, but there are certain differences. You could, look for more interpretations online, but I didn't think that it's that important. So Jupiter will be in Capricorn during this time. As you can see on the screen, the most affected house for you will be the 7th house, where Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto will be conjunct. And also, as you can see on the screen, Saturn rules the 7th and the 8th houses for your ascendant, and Jupiter rules the 9th and 6th houses. So what this shows me is there will be heavy responsibilities and transformation going on in the partnership business departments. So the 7th house rules partnerships, whether romantic or business, and it also shows business. So for somebody who has their own thing or was considering starting their own venture, they will be particularly affected by this. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's really important to look at what the conditions of these planets are in your Ashtaka system, or whether you're going through the Mahadasha or not. So basically, the theory is that if you are going through the Mahadasha of either Saturn or Jupiter, then you will be particularly affected. Now, how you will be affected depends on the Ashtaka score. So if Jupiter or Saturn or both of them have an above average score, most likely there will be some gains and some positive expressions of these transits. If not, it's most likely that they're going to be negative. If you are not going through the Mahadasha or the Ashtanga for either of these planets, then you will still feel the effects, but there won't be like catastrophic changes either way. So whether they're negative or positive, you're just not going to feel the effects as strongly as if you were going through the Mahadasha or Antardasha. Just a parenthesis. Since Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, however, generally, I'm going to look at it generally without looking at Ashtanga and all these things. But I did tell you these things because you might want to look into them. So there are going to be nuances based on this. But regardless of whether you look at the Ashtanga or the Mahadashas or Antardashas, the fact is that Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu are your malefics for your ascendant, for Cancer Ascendant. And Saturn rules the 7th and the 8th house. Jupiter rules the 9th and the 6th houses. This shows me that relationships might end during this time. Unless Saturn or Jupiter have really high Ashtanga scores and or you're going through the Mahadashas. Actually, and if you're going through the Mahadashas. So if you have both high Ashtanga and you're going through the Mahadasha or Antardasha of either Jupiter or Saturn, then you are most likely going to experience the positive expressions. And the positive expression of this particular placement in the 7th could be that you're going to tie the knot. Like if you have been in a long-term relationship, or not even if you just actually irrespectively, it increases the chances of you getting married. Because the 7th house is the house of official partnerships. Or another thing that can happen is if you have been applying for let's say for a loan to start a business, you're gonna have that loan approved if you're having the good scores. On the negative side, if you have your own business, it can bring losses and enemies will interfere with your business or your partnerships. So yeah. 6th house, which Jupiter rules, is the house of enemies. It's also the house of subordinates. So again, that's another way to look at it if you have your own business. It's also the house of pets. So another interpretation could be that your pets are somehow going to affect your relationship, but that's unlikely. I guess it can happen in certain scenarios. Another thing, so the 9th house then, aspected by Saturn and Ketu, shows higher education will see some setbacks, some obstacles this time. Unless, again, depending on the Saturn, Ashtanga, and the Mahadasha. So, again, if you're going through the positive Ashtanga and Mahadasha, it could be that you get to complete your studies during this year. Or maybe you're going to pay off your student debt, so it could be a positive expression. But generally, Saturn does show obstacles, and Saturn shows everything that has to be thorough and basically laid out perfectly brick by brick, or else it will make sure that everything collapses. So if you were enrolled in some kind of higher education program, 9th house rules masters and above, so graduate school and above, you have to really work hard on your studies this year. And your religious views might also become more conservative. So if you haven't identified as religious during this time, you might suddenly try to rekindle with your family's traditions, your family's religion. You might become a little bit more traditionalist and conservative during this time. And also it shows that travel can be restricted. 11th house is where Rahu sits, and it's also aspected by Jupiter. Especially if you have, if you are in Rahu or Jupiter, Mahadasha, Antardasha, and Jupiter has high Ashtanga, there will be sudden financial gains and improved relations with friends and older siblings. First house aspected by Ketu, Saturn, Jupiter. So your joint finances, partner, enemies, subordinates, and foreigners or teachers could impact your overall energy and self-confidence during this time of the year, in a negative way, again, really depending on Ashtanga and Mahadasha. Again, unless Jupiter or Saturn have high Ashtanga scores and you are going through the Mahadasha or Antardasha of Saturn or Jupiter or Ketu, then you will be impacted in a positive way, most likely, by all of these things. So you will get an increase of confidence by all of the before mentioned areas of life. Third house is aspected by Rahu and Jupiter. If Ashtaka Varga is high again, and Antardasha Mahadasha is happening for Rahu or Jupiter, this will be a positive aspect. Your work, your desire to be of service will be high during this time. Your pets, your higher knowledge will keep you motivated and active. Relationship to younger siblings and neighbors will be good or will improve compared to the previous period of time. You might also get foreign neighbors or some kind of foreign influences in the neighborhood. Fourth is aspected by Saturn. It's your home will become more austere and minimalist. Again, this depends on Ashtaka Varga of Saturn and whether you're in Mahadasha or Antardasha of Saturn. Again, so what I can tell you in general, regardless of Mahadasha or Ashtaka Varga, is most likely you will go through some kind of decluttering at the very least, if not a downgrading of your home and your living conditions. So again, if this is a positive transit for you, depending on your individual scores, it could show that you're going to be upgrading your home. So you're going to be maybe moving into a nicer neighborhood or moving into a nicer house, or you're going to be redecorating or buying new stuff. But if it's a negative thing, it can be the opposite. And especially since Saturn rules the 8th house and the 7th house. But the 8th house especially is the house that shows loans and debt and joint finances, can show me that, if this is a negative transit, there would be mortgage problems, because the 4th house is real estate and 8th house is loans and debt and that kind of thing. So, or it could just be debt, even without having a mortgage. It could be just bad financial situation will affect your living conditions negatively. The 5th is aspected by Ketu. As you can actually, Ketu sits in the 5th. Just shows decreased interest in everything to do with the creative expression. Children, if you already have children, you have to watch out for their health, so be very cautious. They might develop strange ailments during this time, and I don't want to bring up the virus, but the virus as well. All kinds of viruses or infections. But you need to watch out for their health. And also, so if you have children, you have to watch out for them. And also it will be a time when children might become particularly introverted. Maybe it will be difficult for you to understand them. So make sure that, they feel like you are there for them and that they can tell you anything, because they might have a tendency to retreat in their own little heads. And again, if you don't have children, chances are that there are going to be less chances of having them during this year, most likely because you're just not going to be interested. But it can also show just that, it's not going to happen. Worst case interpretation could be that you might suffer miscarriages, but again, this would depend on other things as well. Okay. Right, and I did talk about the Saturn Jupiter 7th house in the beginning. Right, so this is it for the chart 1 phase. Now for the chart 2 phase, as you can see, Jupiter will be moving into Aquarius and will aspect the 12th, the 2nd, and the 4th houses. And again, if Jupiter has high Ashtaka Varga score and the Jupiter Mahadasha or Antardasha is happening for you, this will be a positive transit. If Jupiter has a low score, meaning under 2 or equal to 2 even, and you are in Jupiter Mahadasha and Antardasha, and if you are in Jupiter Mahadasha and Antardasha, you will have negative effects coming from this transit. If you are not in the Jupiter Mahadasha or Antardasha, the effects will not be particularly intense, either negatively or positively, but you might feel them more on an internal level rather than an absolute physical, life-altering way. And again, this applies to Saturn, same thing. So again, this depends on your individual charts. So Saturn-Pluto will be conjunct alone in the 7th house, and the 7th will also be aspected by Rahu. So on a positive note, if you're going through a positive transit, your business could get financing during this time, meaning you could get the loan that you have been looking for. And also, like I mentioned before, chances of getting married are also particularly high because the ruler of the 7th is in the 7th. And starting a business also, if you've been trying to start a business, this is a good time. On the negative side, it could mean relationships could end, so this could even mean divorce, or it could be that a business partnership is breaking up, financial loss, especially for people who have their own business, or there could be financial burdens that will lead to crumbling of the marriage or arguments in the marriage. Now, Jupiter in the 8th house, again, positively, it can show an increase of joint finances, dividends, gains from investments that you may have. If you apply for a loan, you are most likely going to get it. On the negative side, it can show joint finances will take a hit. Debt will be a major burden, especially things like student debt, because the 9th house is involved again, because Jupiter also rules the 9th house. And also there could be debt connected to foreign lands or gurus, again, 9th house issues. Or somehow religions. Also, debt acquired on account of pets and enemies. So again, this is shown by 6th house because Jupiter also rules the 6th house. 9th and 5th houses will stay the same during this phase as they did during the chart 1 phase. So you just might want to rewind to hear that interpretation. Rahu in the 11th house without Jupiter reinforces possibilities of betrayal from friends. Like I mentioned before, you need to watch out for any betrayals from people that you know, and older siblings, or some weird difficult situation arising with your friends or older siblings. And 12th aspected by Jupiter, positive, increased chances of long distance travel, increase optimism and faith, and also bed pleasures. Negatively could bring losses connected to foreign lands or secret enemies. First house is aspected by Ketu and Saturn. Will mean increased, on a positive side, can mean increased physical vitality, social image improved, increase in health and physical appearance. Negatively could show business and relationship issues taking a toll on your health and vitality and self-confidence. Jupiter aspecting the 2nd house positively can show gain in wealth, increased quality of family relations. Negatively can show wealth affected by foreigners, higher education, enemies or pets or subordinates, or health issues. Relations with family might also go sour. For the same reasons as mentioned before. The 3rd is aspected by Rahu, which shows foreign influences in the neighborhood again. And let me think. Foreign influences in the neighborhood or connected to the younger siblings. Sudden increase of risk-taking behavior. So you need to be careful about this because Rahu is a functional malefic, like I said originally. So the chances are that you might be inclined to take risks during this time that will lead to losses. So you need to be very cautious during this year. Fourth is aspected by Saturn and Jupiter, as you can see there. So on a positive note, like I mentioned before, it can mean upgrading your home or moving to a nicer home, or buying a home or finding the money to kind of fix it, anything positive that is connected to your home. On the negative side, it can show having to downgrade. Again, same thing. because of financial straits. So this is it, and this has been my interpretation, and I hope you liked it. And if you liked it, once again, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a variety of subjects, please email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description. Thank you.